DC-8 is reconfigured for Icebridge. In 3 weeks' time, the plane is transformed into a working science laboratory with a suite of radar and laser instruments and cameras installed throughout the cabin, cargo pit, and fuselage.
Yeah, the unique thing about the DC-8 is that it was modified to accept, at this point, we've got about 100 different instruments that have been integrated into this airframe. And so part of the modifications that were done early on was to make the airplane as versatile as possible. So if you were to look through the airframe, you'd see cutouts in both the bottom of the aircraft and the upper side of the aircraft. And a number of the windows were modified to carry structural loads of instruments being installed as well. So we can look in pretty much every direction there is outside this airplane as we're traveling through the sky.
Once the science instruments are installed, the flight operations team conducts a series of ground checks and instrument test flights over the California desert to make sure the DC-8 is mission ready.
Looks like maybe it's level now. Right, looks like it's a wings level and rock course.
So the reason why we picked these sites over the desert in California is because they have these dry lake beds there. And they are a very flat area that's ideally suited for our purpose. So we can put a GPS receiver on a car and kind of drive around on these flat lake beds, measure them, and then a few days later fly over the same area with the DC-8 and take a measurement from the air, compare the two measurements and use the data from the ground to calibrate and validate the airborne measurements.
While the aircraft is prepared for the trip to Chile, the science and flight operations teams are required to undergo specialized safety training, regardless of if they've flown on the DC-8 in the past.
Well, for the DC-8, everybody who flies has to go through basically a safety briefing. We go in a little bit more detail because we do more things on our airplanes than commercial airliners do. From our pilots, they go through survival training, water and land, and depending on where they're going, some of them have been through Arctic. All of our crew members, they all have to go to altitude chamber, water survival, land survival, and what we do here is we just build on that and then try and bring anybody else that hasn't had any formal training up to speed so they have at least a working knowledge of the kind of conditions that can happen if something was to go wrong with the aircraft.
Safety equipment tailored for Icebridge is also packed on the DC-8.
Overhead compartments, we've got 20-man life rafts. There's 4 of those on board the aircraft. We have 2 what we call global survival kits, which has different survival items inside of there. For this particular deployment, we also have anti-exposure suits, which if they were to go into the water, we have enough for everybody on board the aircraft for that.
Once the aircraft and passengers are cleared to fly, it's time to pack up for the long transit flight from Armstrong Flight Research Center in California to the southern tip of Chile. The exhausted team gets an opportunity to rest on the overnight journey to Santiago, where a second flight crew is on standby to complete the journey to Punta Arenas.
To get to this part of the globe, it's about 14 hours of flying. We had pre-deployed a crew to Santiago to join the flight at that point so that the crew that flew all night could then step out of the cockpit and rest. And that allowed us to continue on that next day down to Punta Arenas, Chile, without having to stop overnight.
It's a cold and windy welcome at the Punta Arenas airport, the mission base for Operation Icebridge. The scientists and flight crew will call this place home until the end of November.
We are setting up base stations here at the airport that record the GPS data for various instruments. We are talking to people in the weather office, at the tower, the air traffic controllers, and that typically takes about a day, getting everybody settled in here and preparing everything for the first science flight.
With 2 complete flight crews available, science flights are planned on consecutive days to collect as much data as possible over Antarctica.
On a typical Punta Arenas deployment, we have about 300 flight hours, and if we fly as much as we can, which we typically do, we kind of travel a distance in Antarctica that's equivalent to 3 or 4 times around the equator.
I think this is a glacier we're crossing.
Flight tracks are carefully designed by the Icebridge science team months in advance. Survey lines need to be precise, not only to make repeat measurements in exact locations, but also to ensure the plane keeps a safe distance from specially protected areas and animal habitats. A sophisticated guidance system on the DC-8 helps the flight crew keep the plane on track and navigate around more than 1,700 known wildlife locations on the Antarctic continent.
Some of the flights are hand-flown using moving map displays that have a flight track depicted on them. Others are guided by what's called the ATM instrument, where it actually puts out a signal that we feed into the aircraft navigation system, where it guides the airplane laterally.
So the ATM stands for Airborne Topographic Mapper. We designed a supplemental system to the ATM. Some people call it the ATM Navigator. What it does is it couples into the aircraft's own autopilot and helps it to steer the aircraft as accurate as we need it to be. We can generally steer the airplane well within 100 feet and often within 20 feet of where we want it to be. And that means that if you imagine a line that represents our desired track, more than half the time that line will lie within the cabin of the aircraft.
Crossing.
Antarctica's harsh and often unpredictable weather determines when and where the Icebridge team will fly each day.
I've got rising terrain, 12 o'clock, 7 miles.
Tally-ho. Tally-ho, and I'm going to start climbing here.
Pilots need perfect visibility of the terrain for safety.
We'll clear it. It does get steeper as we get closer to it, so we can pitch up a little bit.
Several science instruments need a clear line of sight between the aircraft and the ground to collect proper measurements.
Meteorology is obviously a very big deal with Icebridge. It essentially governs everything that we do on any given day. We have to fly down low and near the terrain in order for our instruments to work as they're optimally designed to work. So it means we need clear skies below the altitude at which we're operating in order to do this kind of work. We know from experience which parts of Antarctica are likely to have good weather and which parts are not. So we design the missions so that each of the missions has a maximum chance of success based on the likely weather scenarios.
We come up with about twice as many mission plans as we can possibly fly in the field. And that's simply so that we have enough target areas to choose from that have good weather while we are here in the field. And then we prioritize these plans.
We have to spend a very large amount of our time while we're in the field trying to sort of ascertain what the weather is going to do. It's a bit like reading tea leaves. It's a very inexact science. We depend entirely on what the meteorologists tell us through computer models. We talk a lot to the meteorologists here at the airport. They're terrific. They give us a lot of help.
The Chilean hosts provide everything from weather expertise to daily flight lunches for the Icebridge team. Airport firefighters and emergency responders are also prepared to help in case anything goes wrong with the aircraft.
So we don't use retread tires.
The DC-8 is not your typical airplane. Structural enhancements, new engines, and cutting-edge data systems make the aircraft a versatile, long-endurance platform for Earth science research.
The DC-8 is uniquely capable for this kind of operation, mainly because of its long legs. It can fly for about 14 hours on a full fuel load.
We have to pretty much commute every day to Antarctica and commute back. And then we need also the capability of collect several hours of data. Typically on every flight we collect several terabytes of data all together. So we have 8 different science instruments on the aircraft, and in total it's a very complex set of measurements that we take over ice sheets, and doing it all at the same time in the same location from one airplane. It's a really a tremendous resource.
It is amazing that a large airplane that was designed originally to be an airliner could be so diverse, but by its design it meets a lot of the requirements NASA had set for the type of science studies they wanted to execute using the airplane to support. This particular airplane was built in 1969, but many of the systems have been upgraded over the years to keep up with current technology. For instance, the airplane has a satellite communication system on it, which something like that didn't even exist when it was originally built. So what's nice about that is we can move data real time during the flights off the airplane to people anywhere in the world via the satellite system and then the internet, and they can send us information real time as well. We can X-chat, it's like texting back and forth to each other. We can send photographs, we can send technical data. You don't have to actually be on the flight to participate.
My view of this airplane is that it's the ideal airplane for the kind of mission we use it for, because it's built very strong. And in the old days when these were being designed and built, the airplanes were overbuilt to be on the safe side. We have a nickname for it. It's a DC-8, and the DC stands for Douglas Cable Car, because unlike the modern airplanes that use electronics and hydraulics to control the airplane in flight, this airplane is controlled with steel cables. So we do hurricane research, we fly through hurricanes, and we do a lot of different types of scientific research, and the airplane can take a lot of damage that would cripple other more modern airplanes, and this airplane still flies fine. It's like an old truck. It's solid and almost indestructible.
A wall of stickers at the mission director's console tells the story of the many missions the DC-8 has flown since it went into NASA's service in 1987. This aircraft and many others operated by the NASA Airborne Science Program fly thousands of hours every year all over the world to support a variety of Earth science research missions. It takes careful coordination and detailed planning behind the scenes to make these missions possible and to gain a better understanding of how our planet is changing.
I've always thought, like, oh my gosh, when you go to space, like, you don't have to grocery shop for like 6 months.
I think it's going to actually put me on a schedule for eating. I am horrible at eating at all hours of the night. I miss lunch.
We're also talking about like beverages. Like, we can probably only drink powdered beverages or water. So nothing, no sodas.
No sodas.
Nothing carbonated.
No,
yeah.
No just. I think it'll be a little bit more healthy than what I normally eat. Plus, I get to eat everything with tortillas. And I'm from San Antonio, so. I will say we are doing this over a holiday weekend. You have huge barbecues and lots of great food. So I think I'm going to want to eat some really good ribs and, you know,
and like
fajitas.
Snacks.
Solemnly swear to eat all of the astronaut food and not cheat.
Never.
Never.
We're in this together, so if we feel weak, we'll text each other. Maybe
We chose 7 days out of the standard menu. You're going to have a protein, some carb, some fruit. The other large category of products that we have are thermostabilized products.
Which is sort of like a military ration that we don't have to refrigerate to keep fresh.
Can't do them in a microwave.
I was going to say, it looks like something that can't go in a microwave. I was going to ask because I didn't want to find that out the hard way.
We also have rehydratable food, which is this type in a vacuum pack where we have to add water, either hot or cold.
We're going to give you a syringe.
Oh. I don't like needles.
And it comes with a needle. So this is how you would rehydrate. Okay.
I don't think we would want to have that laying around our office.
Can I take that through airport security?
Yeah.
It is the day before we start the food challenge, and I just went to go pick up all the materials from our wonderful food lab. So they're all packaged and in my trunk. I asked them what I should eat as my last real meal, and they said something fresh, maybe a salad. The problem is I was thinking nachos, so...
As I suspected, I wouldn't have time to eat in the airport. I'm probably going to grab something to eat on the fly. Hopefully there's some tacos.
So like I said, I was debating healthy or, not healthy. Of course, I chose nachos.
I did end up picking up some tacos, some shrimp tacos actually, with some rice and some beans. I told you I love tacos.
I think it's important to always choose nachos, so I'm going to call this hashtag she chose nachos.
She chose nachos. He chose tacos.
So I have beef and mushrooms, rice pilaf, tomato and artichokes, and a wheat flatbread.
Well, I don't know about that. I have grilled chicken, mac and cheese, vegetarian chili. We're in Texas, come on. Cran apple dessert.
Oh man, I already, remember she told us to tear it so there's no extra pieces of trash.
Oh, so like if we were in space,
So
this
like
would all be floating around.
Yeah.
Once we open those packages, the food is what we consider to be liberated, and it can just float anywhere. And sometimes you find yourself using your spoon or your mouth to chase around the food and make sure you get it all in your mouth instead of stuck against the wall or somebody's face.
Let's heat up a bowl of water and set these green ones in there.
idea.
Yeah. And it looks like it's getting to be the right consistency. Yeah. We might have not done hot enough water too. That might be why it's not absorbing like all the way.
Okay, well,
this is good.
This is interesting. It's not bad. Wait a minute, what's this?
This
Oh,
is
this is
good.
good.
Yeah, the artichokes and tomatoes are good too.
Should I try and eat it like this?
Yeah.
Ooh. You should have just got straws. I could have went.
Right? This is making my day. Like, this is a treat.
I have cran apple dessert.
This would remind me of home.
Yum.
So it's been a long day, but I did not get hungry at all. I had my butterscotch pudding as part one of my snack. I was wondering if the workouts will be hard. They're pretty much the same. I feel really high energy, and I didn't even have coffee this morning. I'm actually really excited about this chicken, corn, and bean. This potato medley actually looks like some potatoes with spices and melted cheese on it. I'm very excited to get some melted cheese texture up in here. Little butter cookies look really delicious and super bougie.
So you'll see I have some Caribbean chicken, pesto pasta with some corn, tortillas, vanilla pudding, and some pears. I got a little bit better at actually making the space food today, but I punctured the actual corn. I cut through it, so I had to rehydrate it through the side. So lesson learned, this smells absolutely delicious.
It's my boyfriend's last day at his old job, so one of his favorite clients brought him these delicious, huge looking cupcakes, so none for me.
Ooh. Do you see that? This is science, y'all. So
Be a nurse now.
I get my mom would be proud. Like, Mom, I'm doing nurse things today. Look at this. Oh, okay. This looks like oatmeal. Do PR for NASA, they said. It'd be fun. What are you having for lunch? What's your main?
I have citrus salad, and then my main thing is Fiesta chicken.
Ooh, I love Fiesta.
Yeah, and rice. yeah, rice with butter.
And
so
tacos.
I'm really excited because I think our food's going to be warmer today.
I agree.
I think we did this right with some practice yesterday.
This is some smoked turkey.
Oh, God.
It's leaking. I wasn't expecting.
It's like
it smells funky. Cornbread dressing, and then some cauliflower. I'm not a fan of this.
Today we're eating in the LBJ room. So President LBJ is who Johnson Space Center is named after.
We should do a toast.
We should. Go LBJ. Woo! Oh, mine's closed.
And so here we go. This is really good. This is the chicken noodles. Let's try some of this green bean. Oh, that could use some hot sauce. The lentil soup. Ooh, it's hot. Ooh, hot. See, These are actually my tortillas. Astronauts on board the International Space Station can actually eat tortillas, and it's one of the things that they like to do because you can pretty much grab anything that's floating in space with them.
2 quick miscellaneous notes. I've been living a really scheduled life and waking up early and going to bed early because I've been having to wake up with enough time to make breakfast, and then I go to bed shortly after dinner just so I don't get hungry again.
I think Dan has a burrito.
Oh,
I
yeah.
am jealous right now.
I went for peach and queso.
Apples, fresh fruit.
Which may or may not be organic.
My snack was chicken in a pouch, so...
Mine was tuna in a
Yeah.
pouch.
There you go.
Lemon curd cake. Oh, it's kind of like you're right.
Not your grandma's. was just at the mall, and whew, that was a week time because all of my friends, I got some really good appetizers, and when you're just all sitting around the table together, I had to really stop myself a couple times to not mindlessly reach for some of their chips or pretzels.
What are you eating?
A cupcake.
And what is Isidro eating? Space chocolate.
Space chocolate.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the astronaut candy? Is it yummy?
Can you tell which one's the space food and which one is our regular Easter meal here?
Hey guys, what are y'all making?
Astronaut burgers.
My family gets to eat this delicious grilled food, and I get to eat a kind of brisket. It's space brisket and baked barbecue beans, so we'll see how that ends up being.
See this? Oh, it's coming apart.
Oh no!
Oh, save the meat.
It's Monday, so we're done at Wednesday morning. We're really ready to be done. The weekend was hard.
I was not able to eat any of the food that was at the festival. There were some jalapeno corn dogs, and I'm like,
this one's so good.
What is life right now? I can't even.
And we have curry chicken, green beans, and potatoes. The potatoes have been iffy, but these look better than some of the ones. Cream of mushroom soup.
Oh. A little bit of India, a little bit of Texas with this countryness. So ready for this to be over.
Yeah, we're ready.
I need my social life back.
Yeah, no, I'm just...
I'm having milk today. Powdered milk. Ah!
We're nervous about the guests.
I'm more nervous about the milk, I'm not gonna lie. But something that I noticed while we've been eating this food is you have to have it really hot.
On the space station, we put it in a kind of it's almost like an easy bake oven.
Okay.
Where and that does make a really big difference.
So
I gotta admit, when I was making lunch this morning, I wasn't thinking this was gonna be on camera. Leftover rice, some turkey.
But it's home cooked.
It's definitely home cooked. Yeah, I was a big fan of the garlic paste.
Garlic paste.
That could fix anything.
Okay, question. Can you chew gum in space?
Yes.
Okay, because garlic, bad breath.
I wasn't trying to impress any of my crew members. We would use what we call food glue. Something, just make up something. Spray some olive oil in there, try to get everything to stick together a little bit. Or, like I said, the garlic paste worked well for me. When you get a few people with rice in their eye, then after that, you figure something out. It's a lot easier in space because we don't have to load the syringe. Like if you were trying to measure out 250 milliliters of water or 100 milliliters of water, we literally just dial that number and then press the button for hot or cold water.
So talk to me about tacos in space. Tortillas, are they great to have up there? Yeah. Oh, sorry. It just floated on his plate.
Gosh, if we had salsa, we did have salsa sometimes. You can put that on there. The salsa will stick to the bread. You can use the salsa for other things to stick to the salsa.
I'm from San Antonio, and I love tacos. So I told everyone I would make a space taco. Yeah. So it's a little bit leaky, extra moist.
Happy in space. It doesn't rip off the edges, it just makes a bubble.
Gotta do the taco tilt because everybody knows. This is good stuff. That's awesome. This was the Mexican scrambled eggs food lab. They know what they're doing. We got some scientists back there. So is there anything that you...
Woo, we did it! Way better than the LBJ toast.
Yeah.
Favorite meal? I actually really liked a lot of the breakfast food. And the shrimp cocktail was in fact very good.
Ooh, shrimp cocktail. But the scrambled eggs in a taco? Ugh, man. Sorry. Done. And maybe if I had a machine to kind of heat everything up.
If I was sealed away from the outside world and I didn't have all those temptations, maybe.
Maybe if the food was floating around me. but I don't think I would otherwise.
We could do that.
If I were an astronaut.
So I was debating, this is the same debate I started with, nachos or a salad.
Get them both.
I'll get both. I should get both.
At this point, I think we need to treat ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
But I can tell you, I really want some coffee.
Yeah.
Some nice
regular coffee.
Hot coffee.
Like
not
a latte.
powdered. I gotta get some coffee.
And a soda.
Yeah.
This is not easy, y'all. I'm telling you.
Alright, good morning everybody. Roll call, got the pilot, got the co-pilot, GEOC operator, mission director. Alright, flight mission crew, FCIFs are complete, and flight currencies are all checked. Crew schedule has been published. We're NASA 872. Engine start expecting 0600. Estimated landing of 07 tomorrow morning. So the mission duration is approximately 24.
Alright, thanks everybody.
I didn't ignore your email.
Hawks are strong, powerful birds capable of flying thousands of miles each year. Some species undertake long migrational journeys, a testimony to their strength and stamina. Our bird will fly over 10,000 nautical miles and will reach an altitude of 65,000 feet.
Preparation for an HRX flight starts a couple of days before the flight, where we get together and look at the meteorological forecasts and decide where to send the aircraft.
Those targets are determined by the circulation of the atmosphere, which varies from day to day.
So we design a flight based on meteorological data to go down and sample in near the tropical tropopause, so what altitude to sample, also what latitude and longitude to sample.
We're looking at all the areas where the scientists want to fly, and we coordinate those areas with the Federal Aviation Administration.
We work with the scientists beginning at that time to come up with options and a plan to get them what they need. We try and maximize the time that we spend in the air.
For this experiment, we're focused on regions where temperatures are cold because we're interested in high altitude clouds. These clouds are about 10 miles or 16 kilometers above the surface.
When all the instruments are ready for flight and everything's been checked out, and the aircraft's been checked out, and we button up all the hatches, and we're ready for flight.
24 wind calms, altimeter 2984.
Once everything is ready in the control room, we give the OK for engine start.
Got control panel, secure the aircraft to shores.
So we're ready for aircraft taxi prep.
Copy and work.
Center line, 22 left. Roger.
And Trapper, can I get a take-up report?
Yes, sir. Runway's clear. You're going for takeoff.
Roger that.
40 knots. 80 knots.
Takeoff. Ready now.
And payload admission, this is data KUS.
We fly it with a mouse and keyboard, and it's more like flying an airline that's always on autopilot.
Well, with the Global Hawk, we have these same controls, only we're just on the ground, and the aircraft could be, several thousand miles away.
Rather than pointing the nose in any given direction or setting a throttle for a particular power setting, we just tell the aircraft, go to this heading, go to this altitude, go to this airspeed. The system itself decides on the best way to get there.
And one of our challenges is to kind of understand the contingency state that the aircraft is in and make sure we understand what the aircraft is doing, and that's what we truly want the aircraft to do.
Most of the time the aircraft is flying in what we call a cruise climb mode. It's actually full throttle in a climb. It gets up to a maximum altitude and then it has to wait to burn fuel off, and as the aircraft gets lighter, it goes a little bit higher and a little bit higher, up to a maximum ceiling of about 65,000 feet.
Come easy left. Roger, release and then turn.
One of the things we do during these flights is we have a meteorological team, a team of forecasters down the hall who are watching the satellite products and telling us where thunderstorms are, for example.
There might be colder temperatures south of Hawaii versus just off the coast of South America or Central America. So we have to know where to direct the plane. So we look very carefully at the meteorological situation first. Then when they're in the air and you're flying along, oftentimes these forecasts are wrong.
So when the atmospheric conditions change during the flight, when we're out over the ocean, a lot of times there's a request for us to change our flight track. Maybe the area that they're interested in is in a different area. So one of the things that we will do is coordinate that flight change.
We will use the information we're collecting as we fly along to redirect the plane.
If you'll notice up on that forward deck of the airplane, there's a big white 48-inch dish. That's a KU, a commercial KU SATCOM dish, and that is constantly pointing at the satellite that we have subscribed to for the missions.
We actually get extensive data transmission from what the instruments are measuring in flight.
We decide based on what we see to send the aircraft somewhere else or to have it go down to different altitudes.
The classic case, as I said, is you look down, you see a cloud on the LiDAR, and you say, we're going to turn around, descend into that cloud, and sample it. So we'll profile down through these thin clouds, making measurements of not only water vapor, but the temperature and the pressure, and a range of other gases, including ozone, chlorofluorocarbons, and so forth, so that we can understand the movement of air and the behavior of the air in that layer as we dive down.
One of the great things about this is being that our ground station is building-based and we have all of the scientists in the back room. We always fly with two pilots. This gives us the opportunity for one pilot, the mission commander, to get up, go to the back room, leave the other guy to monitor the airplane, and we can talk with any one of the particular scientists, whoever has the most important data that they want to get at that particular time, and we can work directly with that scientist, sit right down at the table with him or her, and decide what's the best way to get them what they want and still meet everybody else's needs.
Obviously, the pilots fly the plane. They're the ones who are talking to ground control, but the pilot has to know where to go, and that's where the scientist role comes in. The scientist will pick the targets and direct the plane towards the appropriate targets, both before we fly and while we're flying.
It's quite a process because sometimes it can mean a major shift in the flight track. So we will look at what they have proposed and provide some feedback, and then we have to talk to air traffic control to make sure that what we're proposing is okay with them. So we'll change the flight track sometimes many times during a flight.
And so that's how we coordinate between the flight operations team and the payload operations team. So it's a very close collaboration during a flight between both groups.
Very interesting for me too, because coming from a platform where we would just have instruments loaded on the plane and we just go fly a mission, we get real-time interaction with the scientists, and I've learned a whole lot just in the few years I've been doing this on what's going on in the back end of the airplane. Very exciting and very interesting.
872 is coming right, not bad. 30 seconds.
Well, what next and what's important to do?
We hope that HREX will improve our understanding of this part of the atmosphere, but ultimately HREX will raise some additional questions as well.
We have a lot of work to go, and we hope that doing HREX with multiple missions, different times of year, in different parts of, mostly over the Pacific, but into the Indian Ocean, to fully understand the range of conditions that we'll see, that models have to consider all of those ranges of conditions in order to understand the climate system properly.
We need to develop some more instruments and fly them on Global Hawk and other high altitude aircraft to make measurements there as well.
Emily Dickinson once wrote, "The brain is wider than the sky." Many questions have been addressed along the way, and new ones have surfaced. We'll keep searching, for the answer is in the air. Carl Sagan once defined the Earth as the pale blue dot. "70% of its surface is covered by water." Life on our planet began in the oceans some 3.5 billion years ago. Since then, water has been an essential component for us. In fact, 2/3 of our bodies are made out of water. We can't imagine life without it. As far as we know, without the presence of liquid water, life is not possible at all. Water is all around us. It's not only in our oceans, but we also find it in rivers, lakes, ice, rain, clouds, even in the air we breathe in, as it's continuously evaporating into the atmosphere.
Water is important for all life. We wouldn't have life on this planet if there wasn't water. When astronomers try to think about other planets and whether they have life on it, the first question to ask is there liquid water?
We have liquid water covering nearly the entire planet, 70% of the planet covered by water. There's water in our atmosphere, in the air, all around us. You don't find any place, any chunk of air in the atmosphere that doesn't have some water molecules or some ice particles or some water droplets in it.
Without water as part of the climate system, we would have wild temperature swings in our atmosphere that would probably make any planet uninhabitable. So water is a key driver.
So water is everywhere. Now, the way water begins, of course, it's a liquid out here, and the sun beats down on the surface and it warms the water, it evaporates it. Just like on your stove, you put your pot of water and your heating element below it heats it up and it boils off, you get steam or you get water vapor. Same way that the sun's energy will warm and evaporate water. That water rises in our atmosphere, and as it rises, temperatures are cooler aloft, and so you form clouds. Clouds are water particles. They're little liquid water particles. Some are very tiny, and they float around as clouds. They can also freeze and form ice particles, and those ice particles float around. Those are also clouds. As the atmosphere moves that water vapor around and those cloud droplets, they fall out of the sky and they come down on the surface and they feed our lakes and our streams. They make the soil wet so that crops can grow. Water is really a fundamental part of our planet. It goes back to the oceans and then it goes through this cycle again. So you get this constant heating up of liquid water, becomes a gas. It precipitates out onto the land, and it drives this, what we call the hydrological cycle.
So as water comes into the atmosphere, it has a number of effects. So it helps to make clouds, it helps to make rain, but water is actually a very important greenhouse gas.
Also, water carries energy with it. It takes a lot of energy to evaporate water. And then when water forms cloud droplets, it releases energy. So water is a big component of not only the hydrological cycle, the movement of water, but the energy cycle of the planet also, because it's a greenhouse gas and because when you evaporate water, it carries a lot of energy.
So the way it works is when we change the atmosphere, put more carbon dioxide in it, it gets warmer, and that allows the atmosphere to hold more water. The water is also a greenhouse gas, so that increases the temperature further, so it's a feedback effect.
Water, being a strong greenhouse gas, will actually amplify the greenhouse gas effect from these other longer-lived species like carbon dioxide and methane. So that's a very strong positive feedback loop which would keep driving the temperature up.
Or you could create more clouds and reflect more energy back to space, which is what we call a negative feedback.
So we have this complicated interaction between the positive feedbacks from the water vapor itself versus the clouds that it forms, giving you a negative feedback. And finding that right balance, that's part of what we're trying to understand with the entire hydrological cycle in the tropical part of the atmosphere.
And it turns out about half of the change in temperature of the atmosphere right now and the change predicted in the future associated with the increasing carbon dioxide is caused by this water vapor feedback.
Water comes and goes, and that's driven purely by the physics of how water works. It's a reactionary greenhouse gas as opposed to a longer-lived stable greenhouse gas. But water's the big player in the entire feedback loops of how the atmosphere works.
So it's very warm here in the tropics, and it's very moist. And so the air down near the surface has a lot of energy in it.
So deep convection in the form of thunderstorms and typhoons actually are more energetic. They go to higher altitudes.
And so it can go quite high. We see these big thunderstorms that develop, and that's this air being funneled up, just like a boiling pot of water. The air gets funneled up into the upper troposphere here and actually go very high.
And so that extends the troposphere upward to higher altitudes, and the temperature keeps decreasing as you go up, and so it's colder.
And so eventually, most of the water gets frozen out as you get up to these altitudes of 50, 60,000 feet. So it's incredibly dry, even though down at the surface in the tropics, it's very wet and moist. It's very high humidity, it's damp. When you get to 55,000 feet, about 16 kilometers up, it's incredibly dry.
You still get some water making it up to the tropical tropopause, And there the atmospheric motions transport air into the stratosphere. So air is transported into the stratosphere with a small amount of water that's left behind, and that's controlled by the temperatures at the tropical tropopause. So if the tropopause is colder, less water will make it into the stratosphere. If it's somewhat warmer, more water will make it into the stratosphere.
Above us, up at 40, 50,000 feet in the tropics, the atmosphere is going to warm up through this century. And because of that, there will be less freeze drying of this air going up. And so the thinking is that water might go up. Now, water is a powerful greenhouse gas, so if water increases at those higher altitudes, it will act to trap more energy at the surface. So it could cause the temperature to actually go up higher.
Climate change will have huge impacts on food supply, on ocean levels and flooding of coastal regions.
It's important to understand, put all of this together, to understand how water will change through the next century.
The more we understand the processes, the better off society will be because of it.
ATREX, when studying the tropical tropopause, is addressing a key uncertainty in our ability to predict future changes in climate in response to human influences.
It is believed that Guam was first discovered by seafaring people who migrated from Southeast Asia around 2000 BC. When Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan arrived at the island in the 16th century, he found a highly stratified society, experts in the art of sailing and skilled craftspeople, the Chamorro. Since then, numerous expeditions have investigated this region of the Pacific, yet there are still many discoveries to be made and places to be explored. Although this time we'll be looking up, way up into the sky.
Attention on deck, engine start on my mark.
That's number 7324.
NASA 872 872.
My land-covered career really started in 2002 with biggest wildfire in Oregon's history, and that was the Biscuit wildfire. I, at the time, was doing botany surveys and looking for rare plants or rare mushrooms, and so I was spending a lot of time out on the forest looking at and taking photos and doing the documentation that a scientist or a land manager does. When that fire happened, it changed everything, because we all had to react to this fire that was burning up some of the places that I'd literally been the day before. And it was mapping what was there and what was under threat, but it was also mapping the effects of the fire. We needed to find a way to look across 500,000 acres. And the only way that we could really do that was satellite data. If we can't get out and actually measure every single thing, what are we missing? And that's where citizen scientists can actually come in and really help traditional scientists to better understand what is happening around them, but also fill in these gaps.
The Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment program is an international science and education program. It provides students and the public with the opportunity to participate in data collection and the scientific process. The Globe Observer app is one of these opportunities, allowing citizen scientists and students to take land cover observations around the world and submit them to a larger database. But what exactly is land cover? Dr. Eric Brown de Colston of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center explains.
Land cover is really the basic form of the landscape that we have around us. So whether it's a forest or a desert, but it's really one of the components of the landscape that we can study from space.
Dr. Peter Nelson is a scientist who uses land cover imagery in his research.
I am a remote sensing scientist who studies land cover across the globe. I use satellite imagery to make maps of land cover and try to quantify what covers the Earth. Sometimes a satellite can't see what's happening underneath a tree canopy or what's happening underneath cloud cover. And so we really need people to go out there and to take these photos, to do these observations, to help fill in where a satellite can't actually make some observations.
Just like any digital photograph, land cover images are made up of a series of pixels to show what covers the Earth. A pixel, or picture elements, is the smallest unit of a digital image. When combined with thousands of other pixels, a picture is formed. Each pixel color shown represents a land cover type. It's from these pixels where ground verification or ground truthing come into play. You see, depending on what satellite is taking images, a pixel can cover roughly an area 30 to 500 meters squared. For imagery captured by Landsat, a pixel is 30 meters squared, or about the size of a baseball diamond. However, part of that pixel showing forest might actually be water, or shrubs. By taking land cover observations, citizen scientists can help answer these questions when it comes to land cover maps. So, why are these land cover observations so important? Why are they taken in the first place?
We also are looking at how these components are changing over time. So deforestation in the Amazon or across the world, how are cities expanding? A lot of different things to study, and really the view from space is the way that we do it here at NASA. We have big supercomputers that simulate the physics of the atmosphere and the land, the interaction between the Earth systems. It's important to have that, that land cover map. It sets certain parameters. Those models can actually be used to look at current day conditions and weather. So based on these current conditions, what might the Earth look like 50 or 100 years from now? There's an element of understanding, but then also being able to predict into the future, what that might be like, what these changes may mean for us.
Each point shown here represents a real-world measurement of environmental conditions. Scientists use computer models to fill in information where measurements may not exist. By verifying the satellite imagery and using the data for these models, scientists can predict changes in our environment more accurately. One of these scientists using land cover maps to track urbanization as part of her work is Dr. Amita Mehta of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center.
So urbanization changes terrain as well as characteristics of the surface itself. And so impervious surface is what we look at when we are monitoring flooding. When there are, say, parking lots or cement and concrete surfaces, they increase. So previously, if it was a farmland or something which was not built, and if that is built now, that water previously that could go or percolate in the soil and in the ground now cannot go in, and it stays there. Monitoring helps you to plan for it. So if you see land cover changing, even then you know that how water is going to flow in that region might change. If you have to send rescue out or you have to plan for relief activities, then if you know land cover, then you know where there might be help needed.
By using land cover maps and models that reflect changes over time, scientists can predict where flooding and other events may occur. With a changing climate, these predictions from models and land cover maps can help scientists better understand these changes and help communities prepare for them. But Perhaps a more important reason as to why take land cover observations is you get to participate in a community of scientists, citizen scientists, and students.
So it's a very important component that the citizen science and students of the GLOBE program and Globe Observer can contribute to is by really giving us the information on the ground of what they're seeing around them and in front of them. And we hope over time as well how maybe some of these things are changing, because those would be very valuable for science.
I saw the value of having information before a hazard happens, because once that fire went through an area, we can never recreate that data. This is all important for us to share and put together, because that's how we understand Earth as a system. All of these things end up affecting where we live, why we live where we do, and why we make some of the choices that we do.
To learn more about Globe Observer, check out the website at observer.globe.gov and download the app to start taking your own observations today.
Consider a busy street in a large urban city, what thoughts come to mind? Perhaps honking cabs, cars, or large crowds of people all trying to get to their destinations? Although that picture of a city may seem like a chaotic mess, the reality is that generally traffic and people move in a relatively orderly fashion. For the most part, cars stop at traffic lights, pedestrians cross when safe to do so, and everything works as it should, even if it's crowded. This system of traffic signals and rules of the road has been in place for many decades, so this type of movement is accepted as the norm for how we get around in a city. But what was city travel like before the invention of traffic signals? There are many stories of pedestrians dodging oncoming cars, horse-drawn carriages and fast-moving cars fighting for space, and just general mayhem ruling the day, due to a lack of a well-thought-out plan. There were already rudimentary manually operated signals in operation, but with only a stop-and-go signal, they were not very effective. This left drivers little time to react when the command changed. It was clear when automobiles became more prevalent in the urban environment that a viable solution was needed to lessen the unpredictable nature of traveling in a city. That solution was found in November of 1923, when an inventor named Garrett Morgan came up with the answer. After witnessing an especially bad accident one day, Morgan designed and patented a 3-position traffic signal, which used an automated signal with an interim warning position, the predecessor of today's yellow caution light. With this invention, cities around the world began to adopt this new technology, making the streets safer for cars and pedestrians alike. That fundamental change for city driving came about 100 years ago. Ironically, today, there is a situation in our modern world that is in need of a similar solution, but it will take more than adding a yellow light to solve this new problem. NASA, the FAA, and more than 100 industry partners have tackled the proliferation of unmanned aircraft and the need to regulate and manage these small drones. Just in the past few years, more than an estimated 700,000 unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, have been purchased and are flying around our skies. With the push for these unmanned aircraft to be used in our daily lives for tasks such as delivering goods to our doorsteps, monitoring traffic on highways, recreational uses, and for medical needs, to name just a few, imagine what our world would look like in a few years if a dependable system of control was not put into place. Many have questions how such a dramatic change to the airspace will affect our lives and safety, and with that, NASA has set out to create a research platform that will help manage large numbers of drones flying at low altitude along with other airspace users. Known as UAS Traffic Management, or UTM, the goal is to create a system that can integrate drones safely and efficiently into air traffic that are already flying in low-altitude airspace. With UTM, package delivery and recreational flights won't interfere with helicopters, airplanes, nearby airports, or even safety drones being flown by first responders. On this episode of NASA X, we will examine this award-winning UTM technology and see how it works, and better comprehend this innovative system. We will also take a look at the dedicated NASA team at various field centers and its government and industry partners to understand the work accomplished